I think people are too worried about religion and social issues when they need to be focusing more on this.
And we'll leave today's Washington Journal for live coverage of the U.S. House as they come in next to take up defense spending for fiscal year 2012. Lots of amendment votes expected this afternoon. Live coverage of the House now on C-SPAN.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. As the House reconvenes, we ask your blessing upon deliberations informed by the experiences and interactions of the members with their constituents. We thank you for the time to be together with family and friends as our nation celebrated 235 years of being a marvelous experiment in the self-governance of a people brought together by ideals and trusting in the ability of a free people to govern themselves in justice and peace. Mindful of this great heritage and the hard work and sacrifices of so many American ancestors to us all, may the members of this People's House deliberate in good faith, mindful not only of short-term interests, but of their place in history and of the tremendous responsibility to govern wisely for a bright future for our nation. May all that is done this day in the wake of our national celebration be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the Journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the Journal stands approved. The pledge will be led today by the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Fox.
Please join me in the pledge to our wonderful flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain a request for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, revised and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, the University of South Carolina men's baseball team ended the College World Series this season just as they did last year. The Gamecocks are national champions again, back-to-back victories. By beating the Florida Gators on June 28th at the Omaha, Nebraska's TD Ameritrade Park, the University of South Carolina became only the 6th team in NCAA history to win back-to-back baseball national championships. The Gamecocks won the national title in record-setting fashion. This is the first team ever to go 10-0 in an NCAA tournament. The Gamecock streak of 16 NCAA tournament wins and 11 straight in the College World Series are both all-time records. In the title game, the Gamecocks rode the arm of Michael Roth as he only allowed 2 runs by the Gators. He was helped by series most outstanding player Scott Wingo, who not only batted in a couple of runs, but made defensive plays throughout the tournament. Coach Ray Tanner should be credited with putting the pieces together once again in steering the Gamecocks to a 55-win season, capped off by this national championship victory. In conclusion, God bless our troops, so we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Connecticut is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to honor the life of Arthur Gerbert of North Stonington, Connecticut. As we approach the 1-year anniversary of his passing, it is important for this House to remember Art's remarkable service to our nation and his community. Art was a member of the greatest generation, entering the U.S. Navy during World War II, serving in the submarine force for 20 distinguished years. His career in the Navy included time aboard one of the subs that executed the Wolfpack attack strategy in the Sea of Japan. That strategy was instrumental in asserting Allied naval supremacy in the Pacific, an essential ingredient to final victory. During the conflict, he earned the Bronze Star, and after the war, rose to the rank of commander, retiring in 1962. After leaving the Navy, Art applied his talents to improving the quality of life in southeastern Connecticut. He taught math to high schoolers all across the state. He coached Little League, served on the North Stonington Board of Education, and became Ledyard's first mayor in 1971. What an amazing guy. Art is deeply missed by his loving wife, Marilyn, his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchild. His example of human excellence and service is an inspiration for us all today and for generations to come. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're all glued to our televisions and the Internet watching the Egyptian people, Christian and Muslim alike, demand free and fair elections for the first time. The history of the Christian church in Egypt far exceeds that of Islam. Even now, Coptic Christians make up 10% of Egypt's population of 80 million people. Unfortunately, some fringe groups of extremist Muslims took this opportunity to attack their fellow Egyptians simply because they are Christians in an attempt to drive them out of Egypt. In some cases, they were successful. Our country was founded on the principles of religious freedom. As a Christian and a member of the House of Representatives, I'm hopeful that this example of a broad range of beliefs of our 435 members will stand as an example to the Egyptian people. I would ask the Egyptian people and the current military leadership to stand with the Christian minority in Egypt and ensure their ability to freely practice their faith is not impugned by the current leadership or the one that may be elected in the future. I will continue to keep the Coptic Christians in Egypt in my prayers, and I would ask my colleagues to do the same. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last weekend, while most Americans were celebrating the 4th of July, Montanans were unfortunately immersed in what has become a new American tradition, cleaning up oil spills. After Exxon's Silvertip pipeline failed and spewed 40,000 gallons of toxic oil into the Yellowstone River, Exxon quickly labeled the incident a freak incident, a freak accident, a phrase commonly used by the oil industry after major spills. But an exhaustive history of big oil spills makes it clear these incidents are not freak accidents, but evidence of big oil's neglect. Perhaps the most blatant recent exhibition of empty safety promises belongs to TransCanada, who dubbed the Keystone Pipeline the safest pipeline ever built. A year and 12 spills later, Keystone was shut down and deemed an imminent threat to life, property, and the environment. Before we permit the Keystone XL pipeline, another deadly TransCanada pipeline, we need to reauthorize our pipeline safety legislation because our pipelines need to be as consistent as Old Faithful. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last weekend, we celebrated America's Independence Day, and as I visited with constituents, they asked that we create another independence movement, independence from Middle Eastern oil, and I agree. Unfortunately, rather than pursuing energy independence, the Obama administration keeps fostering an energy dependence policy that costs American jobs, brings higher prices at the pump, and endangers our national security by making us more dependent on unstable Middle Eastern governments. House Republicans have responded by introducing and passing 4 bills to increase our domestic energy production and create American jobs, but the Senate has taken no action. Liberal Democrats are obstructing the opportunity for jobs for Americans, lower energy costs, and a new era of independence. It's time, Mr. Speaker, to declare independence from Middle Eastern oil and start using our own resources for the benefit of all Americans. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back her time. What purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Within the next 24 hours, the House will have the opportunity to end U.S. military involvement in Libya. And we should do so for the following reasons. First, the war is illegal under the United States Constitution and our War Powers Act because only the U.S. Congress has the authority to declare a war, and the President has been unable to show that the U.S. faced an imminent threat from Libya. The President even ignored his top legal advisors at the Pentagon and the Department of Justice, who insisted he needed congressional approval before bombing Libya. Second, the war has reached a stalemate and is unwinnable without the deployment of NATO ground troops, effectively an invasion of Libya. The whole operation was terribly ill-considered from the beginning. While NATO supports the Benghazi-based opposition situated in the oil-rich northeast, there's little evidence that the opposition has the support of a majority of Libyans. The leading opposition group, the National Front for the Salvation of Libya, which had been reportedly backed by the CIA in the 1980s, should never have launched an armed civil war against the government if they had no chance absent a massive NATO air campaign and the introduction of NATO troops. It's time to put an end to this war. Vote to cut off funds.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, rising unemployment continues to populate the headlines. An article last week by the AP points out that several cities in my state of Michigan, including Battle Creek, which I have the privilege of representing, endured big increases in unemployment. Michigan's unemployment stands at over 10%. The policies of this administration exacerbate bad situations. We do not need more overspending, higher taxes, rising energy costs, government takeover of health care, and more regulations. My Republican colleagues and I have put forth a jobs plan. We know government cannot create jobs. Instead, we can support an environment where the private sector flourishes and creates jobs. Our jobs plan will reduce regulatory burdens, which are currently costing small businesses over $10,000 per employee each year, requiring congressional approval for any regulation that has significant impact on the economy. Our jobs plan will fix the tax code, streamlining and lowering tax rates. Our jobs plan will encourage entrepreneurship. Our jobs plan will increase domestic energy production and will cut unsustainable spending that creates crushing burdens of debt. At home last week, I was constantly reminded how the lack of good common sense, good-paying jobs are affecting my constituents. It's truly time for America to stand up for its liberty and its next generation. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentlelady from Minnesota rise? Without objection, the gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this week in Minnesota, our state government is shut down due to a budget crisis. I want to applaud Governor Mark Dayton for negotiating in good faith, making productive compromises, and for never forgetting the needs of Minnesotans, especially our most vulnerable citizens. The Republicans controlling the Minnesota legislature issue ultimatums, and they want to mortgage our state's future by cutting health, education, and law enforcement. In Congress and in Minnesota, Republicans use the same playbook. First, create a crisis, put jobs at risk and the economy in peril, and then ignore the needs of middle-class families, and then fight to protect the interests of millionaires and billionaires. What we're seeing in Washington and St. Paul is a radical Tea Republican Party extremism, threatening jobs and the economy with destruction in the name of political advantage. This is a dangerous political strategy, and it needs to end now. Democrats and Republicans need to work together to solve our nation's problems. The American people and Minnesotans expect that of their elected leaders. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back her time. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to tell a rare success story that I saw firsthand last week. Custom Aluminum Products, a local manufacturing business employing more than 360 people, is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Throughout those 50 years, they have grown from a small local manufacturer to a nationally recognized leader in the aluminum industry. I tell their story today because Custom Aluminum is a thriving local business, expanding, employing, and excelling despite the economic and regulatory burdens. We have much to learn from stories like this, that if given the opportunity to excel, our small businesses will answer the call, and that it is never the role of the federal government to create jobs. Instead, government must get out of the way of small businesses by reducing job-killing regulations and bureaucratic red tape and allowing the job creators to do what they do best, create jobs. We must bring back certainty to the small business community and rebuild their confidence in our economy so that we can get Americans working again and celebrate many more local success stories like this in the coming months and years. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Ask permission to rise, address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my
Without
remarks.
objection, the gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to bring your attention to the front page of USA Today. The story is titled, Medicaid Payments Go Under the Knife. This is an issue that, unfortunately, is going to continue to get worse. Medicaid isn't just going under the knife, it's being slashed. The simple truth is that Medicaid is becoming coverage without access and only an empty promise for the people who arguably may legitimately need its services. And the Affordable Care Act is only going to exacerbate the problem with patient access to physicians. The new health care law has changed what was a program that was designed for the poorest of the poor, pregnant women, children, and the elderly, and turned it into a one-size-fits-all government program. States will add 16 million new people to the program, millions of younger adults, putting an even greater strain on the state budgets. The health care law never addressed the root problem. We need to ensure that Medicaid spending is directed in a fashion that provides an actual safety net for those in need and allows states to create a range of products so to give Medicaid patients access to their physicians and better care. We actually need to get back to the basics, and it's essential that we examine Medicaid and realize the ramifications before our states sink even deeper into a budgetary crisis. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. China recently rolled out the red carpet, pictured behind me, for Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, an internationally indicted war criminal facing charges on 10 counts including murder, extermination, forcible transfer of populations, torture, and rape. Prior to the visit, I wrote a letter to President Hu Jintao urging the Chinese government to withdraw their invitation. Not only is Bashir wanted for his role in genocide in Darfur, but as I speak, atrocities are unfolding against Christians in the Nuba Mountains. Reliable reports of door-to-door targeting and killings, mass graves, Antonov bombers, indiscriminately shelling civilian populations. Consider this reality. Bashir is a wanted war criminal. His murderous aims are unchanged. The Chinese government treats him as a friend and extends every diplomatic grace, and China owns our debt. What is wrong with this picture? An indicted criminal, war criminal, with the president of China. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in response to our friend from Texas who spoke just a few minutes ago, talking about Medicaid. It is true that entitlement programs need to be reformed. It's also true that costs need to be reined in. That's what affordable health care reform actually did. The answer certainly does not lie in the Republican budget passed earlier this year on a party-line vote, which would dismantle Medicare as we know it, turning it into a voucher system, the Ryan Plan, and would turn Medicaid into a block grant program, which would further impoverish our states at a delicate moment of their recovery. We need reform in entitlement programs, but the Republican budget, Mr. Speaker, is not the answer. It is the death knell for a program that covers a third of all Americans' health care. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise after spending the week of 4th of July in the heartland of America, central Oklahoma, where I had the opportunity to hear the thoughts of the families in my district regarding our economy and the debt. No one approached me during the last week to tell me they wanted more government spending to create jobs. No one asked me to create more instability in our economy by raising taxes. In fact, no one told me they wanted to celebrate Independence Day by seeing more government dependence. But over and over again, people asked me to work on solving the problem of the debt, not just voting on another blank check debt ceiling. We need real spending limits to offset our serious budget shortfall. We can't pretend that we can borrow forever with no consequences. There's a limit to how much debt this nation can carry and our worldwide markets can sustain. Our current real debt equals our GDP, and I would hope that many others in this House would see that as a problem as well. Second, we need to address our entitlements. These programs are critical safety nets for the neediest Americans, but they'll be worthless for everyone if we allow them to go insolvent. And finally, we need a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution with real teeth to hold Washington accountable. There's simply no other way to bring future stewardship to taxpayer money. 15 years ago, the balanced budget amendment failed to pass the Senate by 1 vote after it passed this House with overwhelming bipartisan support. Our fiscal reality would be very different.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I would say today we don't have a debt ceiling vote crisis, we have a debt crisis.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas arise?
request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, 16-year-old Adria Salceda was abducted, raped, and strangled in 1994. Her skull was crushed with a rock and her nude body was left with a stick protruding from it on a dirt road in San Antonio, Texas. 15 years ago, Humberto Leal, a Mexican national, was convicted of the grisly murder and sentenced to death by a Texas jury. Tomorrow, he is to be executed in Texas. But the Mexican government and the administration say that Texas violated an international treaty and should have allowed Leal to see a Mexican consulate when he was arrested. So the administration has asked the Supreme Court to stop the execution. However, the Supreme Court has already ruled that states are not bound by such international treaties unless Congress intervenes. Our federal government ought to have as much concern and compassion for murder victims as it does for their foreign killers or Mexico's feelings about the death penalty. Justice should not be denied for Adria Salceda, and that's just the way it is.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise? Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we asked President Obama through his virtual town hall why he won't support the energy bills that have been passed in this House. We also asked President Obama why his administration is keeping American offshore energy resources off limits. An example of those bills that were passed by this House are 3 that came out of the Natural Resources Committee that would have created 1.2 million jobs. President Obama won't support those. The sad truth is that we already know the answers to these questions, but because the administration has made it clear that they want to export American jobs and invest in other countries' resources rather than developing our own. Republicans want to keep our economy help our economy by creating jobs and creating energy independence. But liberals in Congress are standing in the way. Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to consider all of the good energy Republican bills would do for jobs, our economy, and our gas tanks. It is imperative that the Senate signs these bills and the President signs them into law. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentlewoman from West Virginia rise? Gentlewoman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right now, the President is hosting his first ever Twitter town hall to gather input from concerned Americans. Here's some input from some concerned West Virginians. People are having to choose whether to buy groceries or gas as energy prices skyrocket and the economy continues to remain slow and unrecovered. If West Virginians are wondering about one thing, it's why the President isn't doing more to lower energy costs and get our economy back on track. America is truly blessed to have an abundant supply of natural resources, but instead of tapping into these rich minerals, the President has approved extreme regulations that are killing jobs and are hurting our economy. Frankly, I'm stunned as to why the President hasn't connected that a good, solid jobs plan is a good, solid energy plan. Just last month, AEP announced it will shut down 5 plants in West Virginia and Ohio, costing jobs, payrolls, and will raise electricity 10 to 15%. According to AEP, this is a direct response to new and burdensome regulations levied by the EPA within the last years. It's time to take advantage of the resources found right here in America. Doing so will launch our economy in the right direction and create thousands of good-paying jobs.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina rise?
To address the House for 1 minute, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, the Obama administration has moved our country backward in terms of energy production. The de facto moratorium on offshore drilling is causing a significant decline in American energy production. When President Obama took office, these offshore areas were open to drilling and production. Since that time, President Obama has taken steps to effectively reimpose an offshore drilling ban. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue of common sense. failure to develop our offshore energy resources, is increasing our dependence on foreign sources of oil, and denying much-needed revenue to help pay down the national debt. But most importantly, it is costing us American jobs. We have an abundant supply of natural resources off of our shores. Common sense dictates that the use of our own resources to meet the energy needs, and I co-sponsored and voted in favor of H.R. 1231, reversing of President Obama's Offshore Moratorium Act. Not surprisingly, the Senate has failed to consider this bill. We will continue to push for access to our energy resources. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman yields back her time. Chair lays before the House communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. Pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on July 1, 2011 at 11:50 a.m. Appointments, United States-China Interparliamentary Group. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 2219.
Without objection, pursuant to House Resolution 320 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and Committee of the whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2219. Will the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, kindly take the chair?
We're going to reserve a point of order on Murphy's amendment until we know exactly what the text is.
Okay. We don't have a copy yet, right?
We just sent it. We've got to get it. We've got to score the outlays still.
Okay.
The House is in the Committee of the whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2219, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the whole House, or Committee of the whole on Thursday, June 23rd, 2011, all time for general debate had expired. Pursuant to the rule, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. During consideration of the bill for amendment, the Chair may accord priority in recognition to a member offering an amendment who has caused it to be printed in the designated place in the congressional record. Those amendments will be considered read. The clerk will read.
Be it enacted, the following sums are appropriated for fiscal year 2012, namely, Title I, Military Personnel, Army, $43,859,709,000. Military Personnel, Navy, $27,141,334,000. Military Personnel, Marine Corps, $13,480,436,000. Military Personnel, Air Force, $28,264,646,000. Reserve Personnel, Army, $4,333,507,000. Reserve Personnel, Navy, $1,948,544,000. Reserve Personnel, Marine Corps, $645,422,000. Reserve Personnel, Air Force, $1,711,653,000. National Guard Personnel, Army, $7,607,345,000. National Guard Personnel, Air Force, $3,099,629,000. Title II, Operation and Maintenance. Operation and Maintenance, Army, $34,581,321,000. Operation and Maintenance, Navy, $39,385,685,000. Operation and Maintenance, Marine Corps, $6,036,996,000. Operation and Maintenance, Air Force, $36,065,107,000. Operation and Maintenance, Defense-wide, $30,682,265,000.
Mr. Chairman.
What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia, page 9, line 6, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $10 million. Page 31, line 17, after the dollar amount, insert increased by $10 million.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the Chair. First, I want to thank Chairman Young, Ranking Member Dix, and their staffs for coordinating with my office on this amendment and for their work to address operational energy challenges faced by DoD. According to the Department of Defense, operational energy represented 74% of the military's energy costs in 2010, and despite a 9% reduction in energy use, costs increased by 19.7%. Air conditioning alone for American forces in Iraq and Afghanistan cost $20 million each year. Last year's bill to heat, cool, and light 539,000 DoD buildings represented at least $4 billion in direct cost to taxpayers. More than 3,000 American warfighters and contractors have been killed in the line of duty while moving or defending fuel convoys. We cannot continue sacrificing American lives as a result of failing to improve energy use by our military. Included in the bill is a targeted investment of $82 million for Marine Corps expeditionary energy equipment to prevent our Marines from carrying more than 13 million pounds of gear, and will help taxpayers avoid nearly $40 million in annual energy-related costs. Thank you, Chairman Young and Ranking Member Dix, for including this funding in the bill. This bipartisan amendment would complement that investment by operational energy by increasing funding for the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program, known as CERDIP, from $56.4 to $66.4 million, which matches both the President's budget request and the House-passed National Defense Authorization Act recently passed on a strong bipartisan vote. I offer this amendment along on behalf of myself and Mr. Bartlett of Maryland and Mr. Hinchey of New York. As members of the Armed Services and Appropriations Committees, respectively, they have been leaders in the efforts to improve our energy security, and I appreciate the bipartisan support of this amendment. Unfortunately, without the funding that this amendment would provide, the Pentagon would be forced to delay or cancel several strategic environmental programs. For example, this funding would support the Joint Sensitive Technology Munitions Program, which develops alternatives to TNT. These alternatives are less toxic and have lower cleanup costs. The amendment also supports sustainable wastewater treatment technology for forward operating bases in combat zones. The purpose of this program is not to protect the environment near the bases, but to reduce water and fuel consumption associated with waste treatment. Mr. Chairman, this amendment will also help our military adapt to climate change. In Virginia and Norfolk naval bases located at sea level, we're largely witnessing rising water levels already in the Chesapeake Bay and Atlantic Ocean. This amendment simply provides funding equivalent to that which was authorized already by the House Armed Services Committee and by the full House and recommended by the President. I do not believe we should risk delaying or canceling these critical defense programs and ask my colleagues to support this bipartisan amendment. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
May not reserve his time. Does the gentleman yield back?
Then I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time.
Are you on the same page?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman.
What purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Wait a minute.
There is a
I withdraw.
amendment pending before the committee. Does anyone seek to be heard on the gentleman from Virginia's amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Does the gentleman rise?
I rise to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. This amendment would realign $10 million from defense-wide accounts to support additional work within the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program. The program was established in 1990 and is jointly planned and executed by the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, and other federal agencies and industry. The program provides DoD mission readiness and environmental performance by providing new scientific knowledge and cost-effective technologies in the areas of environmental restoration, munitions response, resource conservation, and weapon systems and platforms. SERDP enhances military operations, improves military systems, effectiveness, enhances military training and readiness, sustains DoD's training and test ranges and installation infrastructure, and helps ensure the safety and welfare of military personnel and their dependents by eliminating or reducing the generation of pollution and use of hazardous materials and reducing the cost of remedial action. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
The gentleman yields back his time.
Mr. Chairman.
What purpose does the gentleman rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment would offer $10 million to a cut that the committee had already made in the O&M maintenance defense-wide accounts. Actually, the Defense Department offered up this when we were looking for savings to achieve the $9 billion savings that we had to achieve. This is one of the areas where the Defense Department indicated no problem with taking this cut. You'll hear me discussing this through the day and through the evening as long as we're dealing with this bill. We had to come up with $9 billion in reductions from the President's request. This is part of where we got the $9 billion. And since the Department did not have any objection to this, in fact, offered this up as a possible way of helping with the savings, I must oppose this amendment and ask that the members do so. I yield back my time.
Yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Virginia.
On that matter, I would ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia will be postponed. What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 23, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Brown of Georgia.
Gentleman from Georgia, Dr. Brown, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment would reduce the operating budget of the Office of Defense Secretary by 10%, moving roughly $217 million to the spending reduction account. I've spent a considerable amount of time here on the floor of the House during this appropriations process working hard to find spending cuts across every level of the federal government and across nearly every agency. The Office of the Secretary has roughly $2.1 billion included in this bill for its operation for this fiscal year, which is 4 times the combined operating budget of the Secretaries in our 3 previous FY12 appropriations bills. I understand the challenges the Secretary of Defense faces on a daily basis and the enormity of the department he is tasked with overseeing. But even the Department of Defense must do its part to reduce the deficit. I urge support of this amendment. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Washington.
I move to strike the requisite number of words, and I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to the gentleman's amendment, very strong opposition. The decrease appears to be directed at funding provided in operation and maintenance defense-wide for the Office of the Secretary of Defense. The operation and maintenance defense-wide account received a thorough review during the committee process and has already been reduced by $258 million from the budget request. The Office of the Secretary of Defense account has similarly been reduced by $36.4 million based on a detailed review of specific programs within this account. Adjustments have been made to duplicative efforts and to programs that were poorly justified. Further reductions risk harm to operations in the defense-wide account, such as special operations activities, education programs like the National Defense University and the Defense Acquisition University, and organizations that perform basic operational functions like finance and human resources. I urge all my colleagues to vote against this amendment. I yield.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. Actually, this just cuts the money 10% out of the Office of the Secretary of Defense. It doesn't go into cutting special ops or other funds that the gentleman from Washington, my good friend, Mr. Dix, was talking about. It just cuts 10% out of the Secretary's operating budget. And I just wanted to clear that up, and I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Unfortunately, that's not the way the gentleman wrote his amendment, so I would stand with my provision. It says further reductions risk harm to operations in the defense-wide account, which is, so if you take 10% out of the account, it's going to affect special operations activities, education programs like the National Defense University, Defense Acquisition University, and Lord knows we need help in acquisition, and organizations that perform basic organizational functions like finance and human resources. I stand by my statement and yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment, and I do so reluctantly because I know that my good friend Mr. Brown
is... Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I do so reluctantly because I know that my good friend is very sincere about this. However, Mr. Dix has spoken the position established by the subcommittee very well, and I endorse the comments that Mr. Dix made and rise in opposition to this amendment, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia will be postponed. Gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. It's amendment number 9. Mr. Blumenauer.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm offering this amendment on behalf of Mr. Blumenauer, Mr. Hinchey, and Ms. Capps, who are unable to arrange flight schedules to get back here for this consideration. Mr. Blumenauer's amendment would increase funding for the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program by $15 million to match the authorization of the National Defense Authorization Act passed by the House earlier this spring. According to the Department, Facilities Energy represented at least $4 billion in direct costs to the taxpayer this year. The Department is paying to heat, cool, light, and operate in 539,000 buildings and structures holding 2.2 billion square feet. The Environmental Security Technology Certification Program is focused on finding ways to decrease energy demand, develop smart distribution systems, and increase the use of alternative and renewable energy at U.S. military installations. ASCAP was established in 1995 to promote the deployment of proven innovative technologies to field or production use. The program demonstrations collect cost and performance data for new technologies to help these new technologies overcome the barriers to development. The goals are to identify the most promising new technologies to help DoD improve its environmental remediation, such as unexploded ordnance, cleanup, energy performance, and cost savings. ESCAP funds in 5 program areas: energy and water, environmental restoration, munitions response, resource conservation and climate change, and weapons systems and platforms. The program uses an energy testbed concept that's focused on finding ways to decrease energy demand, develop smart distribution systems, and increase the use of alternative and renewable energy at military installations worldwide. These projects include energy-efficient lighting, heating, air conditioning, such as daylight harvesting, personalized dimming, combustion control systems, and high-performance cooling technology. ESCAP is funding initiatives that will make advancements in building control and retrofits, such as the Advanced Building Energy Management Systems and the Zero Energy Housing, which generate 100% of their power requirements through on-site renewable and demand reductions. Another project, the LED street lighting system, will deliver 50% energy reductions over existing streetlight systems at DoD facilities around the United States. An additional $15 million above the President's budget request will help address the immense challenge our military's facilities' energy requirements represent. The HASC has authorized ESCAP at $45 million, which includes a $15 million increase, and in doing so, the authorized has created account number 82A for that purpose. I appreciate Mr. Blumenauer's work on energy security issues, including this amendment, and I ask for its favorable consideration and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment would redistribute $15 million of Army O&M account funding in order to finance the Energy Security and Technical Certification Program. The program is not authorized. It was added by the House Armed Services Committee, but the defense bill is not law. This program currently is not authorized, and because of that, the amendment had to be written in such a way, just a straight increase or decrease, without actually mentioning the actual program, to avoid being out of order. Further, the Army O&M account is funded at over $34.5 billion. Should this project remain in the final authorization bill, and the Department concurs that it is a high enough priority, then there are more than enough funds for them to execute the program. Unfortunately, however, I don't have the ability to make that determination for them on the floor. And because of these and other objections, I must oppose the amendment, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
I rise to strike the requisite number of words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Regrettably, I have to oppose this amendment. My good friend from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, is one of our most thoughtful members and has been a leader on environmental issues. But in this case, we've already doubled the funding for this, and I think this is unnecessary at this time, and we have to constrain spending. I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The noes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Virginia.
On that matter, I would ask on behalf of myself and Mr. Blumenauer a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia will be postponed. What purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Kucinich of Ohio, page 9, line 6. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $3,600,000. Page 33, line 18. After the dollar amount, insert increased by $3,600,000. Page 34, line 1. After the dollar amount, insert increased by $3,600,000.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Today, along with the support of my colleague, Representative Michew, I'm offering this amendment to help an estimated 250,000 ailing veterans of the First Gulf War, over one-third of those who served. It will bring the modest budget for the Gulf War Illness Research Program within the congressionally directed medical research program in line with that of its peer programs to $10 million. Too many veterans of the first Gulf War suffered from persistent symptoms such as chronic headache, widespread pain, cognitive difficulties, unexplained failure, gastrointestinal problems, respiratory symptoms, and other abnormalities that are not explained by traditional medical or psychiatric diagnoses. Research shows that as these brave soldiers age, they are at double the risk for ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, as their non-deployed peers. There may also be connections to multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. Sadly, there are no known treatments for the lifelong pain these veterans endure. In a new landmark report, the Institute of Medicine has recognized that and called for a major national research effort to identify treatments. The scientific community has responded with a dramatic increase in the quality and quantity of proposals that are submitted to the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, otherwise known as CDMRP. In the February 12 Defense Appropriations Bill, CDMRP programs with direct relevance to current forces received a 25% increase. The research conducted by the Gulf War Veterans Illnesses Research Program is vital, not only for ill Gulf War veterans, but also for other military forces. As summarized by the IOM Committee Chair on the topic, Dr. Stephen Hauser, Gulf War illness research is vital to the health and effectiveness of current and future military forces, in addition to Gulf War veterans. Most encouraging, CDMRP-funded researchers have completed the first successful pilot study of a medication to treat one of the major symptoms of Gulf War illness. Just last month, a report was released on the first successful medication program study in the history of Gulf War illness research. The study showed that the low-cost supplement, coenzyme Q10, produced significant improvement in one of the most serious symptoms of Gulf War illness, fatigue with exertion, as well as improvements in nearly every other symptom. It is not a cure, and the study needs to be replicated in a larger group. But the result is extremely encouraging. The next step is for clinical trials, which will only be funded by the CDMRP. The amendment's offset comes from the Pentagon channel, which is costly. It's over $29 million in the past 3 fiscal years. It's redundant. There are 8 other Armed Force Network television services providing news, entertainment, lifestyle, documentary, religious programming to service members and their families across the globe, and it doesn't provide a vital service. But this research is critical to our troops in the field now, as well as those who will be fighting in the future. According to the VA's Research Advisory Committee on Gulf War Veterans Illnesses, the known cause of Gulf War illness are from exposures. The known causes are from exposures occurred in Iraq, like certain pesticides, or from exposures incurred before deployment, like pyridostigmine bromide, a drug taken as an antidote to the nerve gas sarin. There's also some evidence for a link between Gulf War illness and exposure to low-level exposure to nerve agents, close proximity to oil well fires, receipt of multiple vaccines, and combinations of Gulf War exposures. Current forces in Iraq and Afghanistan can still incur each of these exposures. That is why the chair of the IOM Committee report on Gulf War illnesses said, quote, "This report makes findings and recommendations vital to the health and effectiveness of current and future U.S. military forces, in addition to our Gulf War veterans." This is a time for us to say thank you for those who served, to say that we understand the suffering that Gulf War veterans have had with this illness, and that we're dedicated to finding higher levels of research to make sure that we can relieve their suffering. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Ohio yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that the Gulf War Illness Program is an important medical research area, the program to which Mr. Kucinich speaks. But this bill already contains $6.4 million for the program. In addition, in the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Bill has already appropriated an additional $15 million for the program. The committee has been extremely careful to guarantee that medical research programs were funded at the level that they could be adequately dealt with as far as the medical researchers are concerned. But we believe in the days of having to reduce our budget by $9 billion, we believe that we have adequately funded this program along with the $15 million added by the Subcommittee on Military Construction and the Veterans Administration, and so I rise in opposition to this amendment.
Gentleman yields back his time.
I yield back.
Gentleman from Washington.
I rise to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes.
I have followed closely ever since the Gulf War this issue, and I feel that the gentleman has made a very compelling case, and I think we should add this money, and the offset is acceptable. So I urge a yes vote on the Kucinich amendment and yield back my time.
Gentleman from Washington yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Ohio. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Ohio.
And that I ask a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Ohio will be postponed.
I have an amendment at the desk.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas rise?
I have an amendment at the desk, noted as 175. No, it was supposed to be. Amendment number 69, please.
But then a minute ago she said 75.
What is the file up in the
That says 76, but she said 75.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas, page 9, line 6, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $650,000. Page 33, line 18, after the dollar amount, insert increase by $500,000. Page 34, line 1, after the dollar amount, insert increase by $500,000.
Gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and I want to express my appreciation to Mr. Young, who is the chairman of the subcommittee, and to Mr. Dix, who is the ranking member, for their long years of service. To my colleagues, good news today. When the announcement came that the President of the United States would send the same sympathy letter to families of those soldiers who committed suicide in battle as those who had fallen in different ways in battle. The reason why that is good news is because the sentence that I am reminded of is that the President and his office indicated that they did not want to stigmatize mental health concerns of our soldiers. I want to pay tribute to the Defense Appropriations Committee for its work on post-traumatic stress disorder, and to make note of our late friend, Congressman John Murtha, who worked with Houston on establishing a new post-traumatic stress disorder center. I'm grateful for that. because as all of our states, many of us are facing the large numbers of returning soldiers from both Iraq and Afghanistan. So I ask for my amendment to be supported to increase research and development funding for post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. That affects our men and women who serve selflessly and bravely in our nation's armed services. My amendment would increase research and development funds for PTSD and TBI by $500,000. It will offset by reducing general operations and maintenance and activities of the Department of Defense. I believe this is critical in ensuring our country's military. We obviously were aware of post-traumatic stress for those who follow the military in all of our wars. We've seen it every day by our Vietnam soldiers, those who came home without welcome. We see it in the numbers of homeless soldiers, many of them Vietnam vets. Over the years, members of the military and veterans have seen a drastic increase in the number of cases of PTSD and TBI. PTSD cases in the military have risen from 1,614 total cases in 2000 to 88,719 total cases in 2010. Additionally, it is reported that 17% of all active duty soldiers, 25% of reserve soldiers, and 19% of Vietnam veterans suffer from PTSD. Traumatic brain injury in the military have increased from 10,963 total cases in 2000 to 178,876 total cases in 2010. We know the kinds of explosives that are now used in war cause greater damage or more damage or damage of this kind to our soldiers. Also, in May of this year, a three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit, U.S. Court of Appeals, ruled that the Department of Veterans Affairs' treatment of mentally ill veterans is so inadequate, it is unconstitutional. We are grateful for the work that has been done, but this court said many veterans with severe depression or post-traumatic stress disorder are forced to wait weeks for mental health referrals and are given no opportunity to request or demonstrate their need for expedited care. This is simply unacceptable. The courageous men and women of the armed forces brave IEDs, attacks, injury, and horrific violence to protect the safety and security of the United States. I was listening to a soldier on the television speak about his injuries and then mention the fact that a soldier in front of him, his comrade, his friend, stepped on the IED, but the vast damage of all of those who are around him. And so we know the collateral damage is as severe as it might be in any other form of mass war. We see the loss of life, but we see the injuries remaining. We must in turn care for them, and when they return home, we must make it a priority, as I know that this committee has done, to increase the resources. Members of Congress may disagree when it comes to the level of commitment and resources of the United States to foreign wars and conflicts. However, we must not allow these debates and discussions to cause us to fail to properly care for these brave soldiers when they return home or when they're injured. I believe in Congress and its wisdom, and I believe it is committed to taking care of our warriors. As the members of the military return to their homes and their families, they come without the desire for glory or appreciation, but whenever you talk to a vet, they are looking to make sure that they have the care that they need. Increasing the amount of resources, however small this amendment offers, helps in specializing, finding ways to prevent and better treat post-traumatic stress disorder and TBI in the first step, and is the first step that Congress can add to the work that is already being done. Access to post-traumatic stress disorder treatment is especially important since veterans living in such areas that are outside of some of our larger centers are less likely to be diagnosed. We should not wait. I believe we are of good mind and goodwill when it comes to our